One of the things we are missing this Easter is an Easter garden, something normally made by children to give us a picture of the Easter story. So I'm going to take you on a journey through my garden, my Easter garden. This journey begins in the Garden of Gethsemane with Jesus alone, praying, fearful perhaps, in spiritual agony, facing something terrible and facing it alone. His friends are nearby, but they're asleep. But then friends are friends, and sometimes friends don't help. One friend does more than not help. One friend betrays with a kiss. Judas. Betrayal is always painful. However much we might have anticipated it, it always hurts. And so, as a consequence of his betrayal, Jesus is arrested and taken to be tried, first by the Jewish authorities and then by the Romans. And the trial is a mockery, and mockery is the end result, as a crown of thorns is placed upon his head, despite all his talk of a new kingdom. And then he is condemned to death. And we move from mockery to humiliation. Because can you imagine the humiliation of being forced to carry the instrument of your own death, being forced to carry your own cross? We're going to change perspective now as we come out into a more open part of my garden. You're going to see the story from a man who was standing, a bystander, Simon of Cyrene. And Simon ended up carrying that cross for Jesus. Perhaps it was too heavy. Perhaps he was pressed into it, perhaps he chose to do it. He was there to help, but what sort of help is it that actually speeds the death of someone? My guess is Simon felt pretty helpless. And then there were the women. Perhaps people who supported or cared for Jesus, who wept and lamented and cried at the sight of him. But what comfort was that? What comfort can any words bring in such a situation? It would have been better had they just been silent and Jesus told them to look to themselves. But at least they cared, but most did not. Some even mocked. But perhaps most awful were the soldiers who, having done the dreadful task of crucifying Jesus and two others, sat down, not looking at the spectacle, but rather playing dice for his clothes, indifference, perhaps the thing we can do best when faced with suffering that is so awful that we are not able to alleviate it. Crucifixion. It is a cruel, public way to die, and it takes time. In Jesus' case, it seems to have taken a few mere hours, which is short. But there is an inevitability about it. And so we come to our 8th picture, Jesus' death. Jesus, the Son of God, dies, even as our loved ones die and strangers die. Death, the end of our journey. And yet, although the journey ends, others continue it. And somewhere had to be found to bury Jesus. And so the journey was taken up by a man called Joseph of Arimathea. And once again, we find ourselves in a garden, only this time not for prayer, but for a tomb. On this journey you've been with me, we've almost done a full circle of my garden. And it seems like a circular journey, but it is not, because there's one more picture, and that picture I will visit first thing on Sunday morning, and you can share that journey with me as well, if you would like. Thank you.